In this section, we've been talking about what is a reference. What sorts of references do we have? What sorts of references do we actually use for a given place? We've discussed state and transition models, and now we're going to move a little bit further to talk about reference sheets. So we want to do several things in this time. The first of all is just talk about ecological sites and how it is that we determine what an ecological site is. And then we'll talk about soil survey and how soil survey is important in determining an ecological site, and how these both ecological sites and reference sheets are actually developed, and then how they're actually used. What's contained in the ecological reference sheets, and how is that interpreted in the field. So this is a flow chart of what might happen as you are beginning the process of determining the capability and the current status of the rangeland. This might be something that you use on private property, also on public property, that would help you sort of design a workflow to be able to implement long-term range monitoring and management. So we're going to start up here, obviously, with step one. And the first thing you want to do is think about drawing lines. Think about the area that you have that's of interest to you to manage or to monitor, and you want to start to distinguish. You want to start that process of saying or determining a particular ecosystem or smaller version, an ecosite, from different ecosites that are in that same area. So that's sort of the first step. When we move down from this, we ask the question: is there a reference sheet? And a reference sheet gives you that rangeland, health information about that particular site. And the process that you have to go to is say, is there a current reference sheet available that tells me what that standard is, right? So we know we've got state and transition diagrams, and that tells us general information, but really what we're looking for here is what we call rangeland health indicators. And we want to know if that information is available. If not, then we have to go through a process of creating that reference sheet, creating the reference, so that then we can evaluate the range after that. Okay, so if we have one of those developed, then we move down here and begin the process of evaluating all the current information that we have on that particular kind of rangeland, and then we review the information, the state and transition models. We review the information that we have about the rangeland health indicators, and then we evaluate the current state of the range. Now, there's a lot of different kinds of information, as we've been learning in this class, that you can collect on any particular rangeland. We can have general soils information. We can have the state and transition diagrams. We can have pictures. We can have documentation that is historical documentation that might be useful for us. So that supplementary information is maybe oral history, practices. All that kind of stuff needs to be collected into a single place, or into a single a single person who can kind of evaluate all that information as an entity in itself. Once you have all that information, then you want to go on from there to get an understanding of where the rangeland actually is. So these, what we call 17 range health indicators, are then evaluated. So for any particular ecological site, we need a reference, right? So I can't apply what I know or have learned about a riparian area, an area near a creek or a water feature. I can't apply that to an upland area. I can't apply that to a terrace that doesn't have the same water regime or precipitation regime. So I have to work within the context of an ecological site, and it's very difficult to apply what happens in one ecological site to a different ecological site. Now, they may be related, but it's not a one-to-one transfer of information or capability from those places. So before you get to working on a reference worksheet or a reference sheet, you actually need to identify the ecological sites. So we're going to talk just a little bit about how we want to do that. So what is an ecological site? Is land with specific physical characteristics, soil, topography, climate, which differs from other kinds of land in its ability to produce distinctive kinds and amounts of vegetation in its response to management. Now this is a really, really full definition. So we have these rangeland physical characteristics that we've discussed before, and then translating those characteristics into what the capability of that land in the short term, in the long term, actually is, right? But we have to distinguish one kind of land from another kind of land, one kind of capability of an ecosystem from a different kind of ecosystem. So this is sort of the initial work that has to happen if it hasn't already been done on your site. So when we arrive at a picture like this, we need to be able to start to distinguish, right? And if you're listening to this, and this is part of the class that has visited the NRCS, this is one of the things that we learned at the NRCS that they begin doing is really get ground truthing. So they'll take a soil sample from here. They might take one from there. They would take one from over here, maybe one from up here, maybe one on the top, and so forth, just to sort of ground truth the differences that you visually see in a picture or in an aerial image, to distinguish those, to begin to distinguish those differences. Now, this isn't very far apart in terms of distance, but there may be a pretty significant difference in total available water in the soil, which is going to obviously influence the productivity of each one of these different kinds of sites. So the first thing we have to do is this distinguishing. Okay, so here we put some names to these areas, and we actually there's actually a new one there that we didn't initially distinguish, but after taking samples and looking a little closer at the plant composition there, we said, okay, we've got this other one called Hill 2 as a different kind of ecological site. Now, each one of these can be treated completely different, and what might be healthy rangeland on Hill 3 is not going to be anything near what the healthy rangeland looks like in the valley bottom. So we have to be able to visually distinguish in reality with scientific tools those differences. We can do this visually from aerial imagery, but we also need to, like I said, ground truth what we're actually seeing in the field, or what we're actually seeing in images with what we see in the field. So if we looked at here, one of the things you need to think about is do you see different ecological sites here? Are there? Is this all the same? Should it be treated all the same? For instance, in this one, we might say that this area that contains this let's say it's sagebrush, needs to be distinguished from other areas because maybe the soil is deeper there. The other thing we can do is think about these slopes back here as a distinguishable area, and then maybe on the mountaintop as well. So again, this is just getting our eyes trained to seeing these different kinds of sites, seeing these different kinds of ecological sites and ecological potentials for the range that's on those sites. So number one, the thing that you want to be able to do is understand how soils play an integral role in determining what kinds of ecological sites there are. And so soil maps are essential in terms of tools that we use to distinguish one ecological site from another. And so we have really specific kinds of descriptions of soils. A soil series, for instance, the most sort of precise name that we can get to a particular kind of soils, and that soils that the soil series is like a plant species, right? So we can have a blue bunch wheatgrass species of plant, and it gives us a pretty precise definition of that species. Soil series give us just like that, give us a specific particular kind of soil in a particular place. So soil maps soil maps and soil series are really good ways to begin that process of determining different kinds of ecological sites. These soil series may be large landscape series in large areas, or they may be really, really small, really, really minutely located in a particular place. And the more or less particular a soil series is, widespread or not so widespread, is going to determine some of the smallest or largest of the ecological site. So, in terms of how this is related, so we can have an ecological site that has more than one soil series. Now, soil series can be related to one another, just like species can be related to one another, have similar characteristics. Soil series can do that as well. And an ecological site can contain more than one soil series. You can also have the alternate happen. You can have a larger soil map unit which contains multiple soil series and multiple ecological sites in that particular unit. So it is an interpretation and a bit of an art to understanding it. It's not a one-to-one correspondence, and that's why getting out in the field and actually taking a look at what sorts of plants are occurring where is really really important. So again, in this case, as we're looking at a particular map, you need to understand that we might have 2 different or 3 different soil series within a particular site. So we have this valley plain, but we can see the vegetation is differing in this valley plain here, right? And so we might have different soil series within that valley plain. So ecological sites and their corresponding maps are really helpful to us, and that's why they're so closely related with Web Soil Survey. So that's why we spend time learning Web Soil Survey in range management, is because those things are definitely linked to one another, and you can find the ecological site information within the Web Soil Survey. So that's why it's important that those two things are found together. So again, we're thinking about distinguishing an ecological site from an ecological site. Then you either have a reference sheet already created for that site, or one must be created for that site. And so we have these things called the 17 range health indicators, and you can see here's the top of one of these sheets. So we have here's the indicator, and here's the potential for the site. And as you're ranking these, you want to use numbers, you want to include expected ranges of values for each specific ecological site. So you can see here's the first one: number and extent of rills. Minimal on slope, less than 5%, and increasing slightly as slopes increase up to 50%, the spacing, the percentages, what happens after fire, and so forth. And so we need some kind of we need a reference system, right? We need a sheet. The best case scenario is to already have a reference sheet made so that you can compare, right, with what's currently there, and you have to have the ability to actually do that comparison. So here's a sheet. Okay, so here's an ecological reference worksheet with the 17 range health indicators, and you can see some of the information. This is one that was actually used. Okay, and so you can see it for each one of these 17 range health indicators. There will be a ranking. So in several of these we have none, right? We have this, and we're going to learn what each one of these are here in just a bit. Pedestals and terracets or windblown areas, none. Bare ground, well, 20 to 30% is bare ground, and they're about this wide in diameter, and so forth. So you get a much better description, definitely than even just the ecological site, right? A state and transition model gives you information, an ecological site description gives you information, and this is even more information for a particular ecological site. So, so a reference sheet will really contain a description. Okay, so in this particular one, we have an indicator called bare ground, well, in all of them you had an indicator called bare ground, and then you have a description of what each one of these ratings actually looks like, right? So for extreme, and look at the language here: departure from ecological site description / ecological reference worksheet. So is it departing from the standard, and this is our standard? Is it departing from the standard? If so, how much is it departing from that standard? And so you have this ranking capability for your range, and it gives it. Hopefully, this is helpful to see just how precise we can get in range management, and you need to also think about how much time this is taking to create this information, and it may take years, it may take decades to create an ecological site description, and then have a reference sheet, and then have these different rankings. That might take a really long time, and that's we've always stressed that range management is a long range, long term kind of a science. It's not that you can't create one of these in a single month. It takes quite a bit of time. So we're going to change gears now. You'll see in Moodle that I'll have a second PowerPoint presentation right after this, a set of slides that is dealing with just those 17 range health indicators and describing each one. So if you're following along on the slides, you might want to pull up that set of slides.